Hit the Russian defense batteries. Airstrike successful. Good for Ukrainian fighters.
In a strategically advancing plan, Ukrainian ground forces liberate the Russian-occupied areas in Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, and Donetsk, wipe out one. On the other hand, the Ukrainian Air Force continues to strike critical targets of the Russian army in the areas planned to be liberated. In recent days, we have been witnessing much more effective attacks of the Ukrainian Air Force in Kherson, Ukrainian warplanes, which remained silent for the first 6 months of the conflict, began to take a very active role in the Kherson counterattack. The Ukrainian Air Force carried out 27 attacks on invading enemy forces last day in the dawn and midnight operations, destroying several ammunition depots and hitting about 4 to Russian force, as well as manpower and equipment clusters. The suppression and distraction of 4 to Russian strongholds in total prevents the Russian troops in the region from gathering for defense. These attacks are seen as a preliminary preparation for a meticulously advanced ground operation. The Russian force witnessing this heavy bombardment means they are now counting hours just to wait for death. It is also reported that hundreds of Russian soldiers and dozens of commanders have now surrendered or fled to the Ukrainian armed forces. The Ukrainian defense forces guard their territory and prevent the enemy from advancing deeper into Ukrainian territory. While this reveals the effectiveness of the Ukrainian AIM force on the front, it most clearly reflects the helplessness of the Russian air defense systems. In addition, Ukrainian air defense units destroyed Su-25 attack aircraft and Ka-52 helicopter, a drone, and almost 1,500 of 6 one-on-one ballistic cruise missiles, worth 65 million. The Russian army, already suffering from a serious shortage of ammunition, may have been completely disarmed with the detonation of the ammunition depot. At the same time, there was a decrease in the weapons of the Russian Air Force, and $1 million aircraft are fodder for the Ukrainian air defense. Ukraine's missile troops and artillery continue to inflict fire damage. Russian manpower and combat equipment engaged in counter-battery warfare disrupt the enemy control system and supply routes in the heavy attack of the Ukrainian armed forces in the Kashmir region the previous day. 7 command points, S-13 manpower clusters were damaged as a result of the general fire effect, radars and communication stations, a bridge, and a number of pontoon crossings. 3 ammunition and fuel tanks were hit, with significantly reduced the combat and logistics capabilities of the occupying forces. In addition, shipments try to be made by Russia from the east and the Mariupol region are blocked by Ukrainian MRs, and the latest updated report by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Russia continues to focus on maintaining full control over the territory of the Donetsk region, maintaining control of the temporarily captured areas of the Kherson region and parts of the Kharkiv, the Zaporizhzhia, and Nikolaev regions. Russia continues to take measures to supply its troops. However, it should be noted that the attacks were carried out on civilian infrastructures because these attacks had to be made on the Ukrainian armed forces. However, since the Russian army could not achieve this, they hit civilian targets by surprise. Private military companies operating in the temporarily occupied areas, especially in the Alexandria Case settlement in the Kharkiv region, suffered significant losses in the visual unit, seriously injured and killed more than 40% of their manpower. Many bodies went unidentified, so they were reported missing in action. Vladimir Putin faces another serious blow as all his units are eliminated in the midst of Ukraine's counter-attack movement. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky reported good news. The east and said some settlements were retaken as both sides reported heavy fighting. Meanwhile, the British Ministry of Defense reported that Russia has slowed down its ability to deploy operational reserves and supply power in the east as they target Ukraine's vulnerable crossing points. These attacks also caused a serious demoralization on the Russian army. The UK Ministry of Defense described the brigades of Russian troops in Ukraine as men, adding that moral levels were low and the quality of military leadership and equipment had dropped significantly since the invasion began. We have witnessed the Russian army, senior officers and generals fleeing the front, resigning, being fired by Putin, or killed by the Ukrainian armed forces. However, the Ministry of Defense reports that such public military exercises have failed to maintain the military's ability on that large scale, complex operations, and that the main purpose of the event to impress Russian leaders and international audiences. In other words, the Russian army is trying to prove to its own people that they are strong by walking on the streets the war operations that they could not do in Ukraine. However, the lost reputation of the Russian army is obvious. We are witnessing together how the reputation of an army, which has long been known as the second largest army in the world, can be damaged. We can see that Russia is on the verge of changing its worst strategy due to its significant arms shortage. We clearly see that high-tech weapons do not reach Russia due to the sanctions and due to lack of necessary components for the weapons. The industrial sector is faced with an absolutely terrible crisis. Reports also show that Ukrainians receive better weapons from NATO-aligned countries, and this gives them the ability to fight smarter. On the battlefield, countries in the West have sent and continue to send world-class systems to Ukraine to combat Russian attacks. If we analyze the Russian economy right now, of course, the energy sector still looks pretty healthy, but the industrial sector looks absolutely awful. The number of plant closures that can truly affect cities driven by only one industry has reached higher levels. This is the care weight how they can fight in war. Precision-guided munitions need this kind of high-tech wizard insight. However, the Russian army opens its hands and prays to God like a magician whose staff has been taken from them. We know that Russia's precision-guided munitions have fired more than 3,500, probably more than that. The ability of Ukrainians to fight smarter is really taking shape, and the whole world is witnessing it. NATO and its allies have been sending best-in-class weapons to Ukraine since the beginning of the war. Ukraine was equipped with HIMARS, repel Russian advances on its territory. Some experts argue that arms have been running low in recent weeks as the EU has given Ukraine. Germany refused to request to send 2 tanks to Ukraine, but promised to continue to support and demonstrate. The USA plays a critical role in this regard, and the idea that Ukraine's supremacy will continue as long as it continues to support Ukrainians reflected in all of us. While we hope that the Ukrainians will regain their freedom, peace, and territorial integrity as soon as possible, we hope that there will be no winners in any world and that the lives lost will not come back. So we wish for peace as soon as possible. Thanks for watching.